Surah An-Nisa. And this surah has a lot of very important things for how we manage ourselves and how we manage our families. So, one of the last ayat that I read is speaking about husband and wife relationship. And the ayah there, it says, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And this sums up how we're supposed to treat one another in family. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. That live together, and particularly how you treat women, بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. In virtue. Every form of virtue, every form of good is called ma'ruf. Anything that people know to be good, that is what we are commanded to do. So sometimes people think about the minimum standards in fiqh, the minimum rights, the minimum obligations, those are important. But Allah commands us to do al-ma'ruf. And the Prophet ﷺ was the best to his wives. And he said, ﷺ, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِهِ وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِهِ. The best of you are the best to your families and to your wives specifically, and I'm the best to my wives. So this is one thing about how we should be with the spouse relationships. The other one, very interesting ayah, it speaks about, of course, the inheritance laws. But what about people who don't have wealth to inherit, to leave behind for their children? All of us want to leave our children in a good state. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَلْيَخْشَ الَّذِينَ لَوْ تَرَكُوا مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّةً ضِعَافًا خَافُوا عَلَيْهِمْ فَلْيَتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَلْيَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. That for people who fear that they may leave behind the children and leave them weak. And here weak means like poor, unable, right? So Allah tells us, فَلْيَتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَلْيَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. Let them fear Allah and say words that are true and that are right. So meaning that is an inheritance that you can leave behind for your children. If you want your children to be taken care of, then Allah tells us it's not necessarily about the money, but it's about you having taqwa of Allah. And if you have taqwa of Allah and you fear Allah and you try to always say the truth and do what's right in your words, in your actions, in your speech, in your work, everything, Allah will take care of your children. And we have a story about that, relating to what we read every week on Jummah, which is the story of Musa alayhi salam and al-Khadr. And we know that he went to reconstruct the wall, and he reconstructed the wall for people who were very stingy. They didn't give them anything. And then Musa alayhi salam was surprised, why are you reconstructing this wall? At least you should charge them money. And it turns out that under this wall was a treasure for some children, and that if this wall were to break, this money would have been taken. And so Allah sent Musa alayhi salam and al-Khadr alayhi salam to basically reconstruct this wall. And the ayah says, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. Their father was a pious person, right? And they say it's not necessarily even the direct father. Some of the mufassirin say it's like the grandfather, or there was a pious person there, and because of that, Allah protected their wealth. So Allah tells us here in the Quran that one of the ways that you protect your children is by you yourself being pious, then Allah will take care of them. Of course, then Allah also tells us in the Quran here about the inheritance laws. And it's very interesting that you find that things relate to money, they are very detailed in the Quran. The longest ayah in the Quran is Ayat al-Dayn in Surah Al-Baqarah. One full page all about the debt and writing down the debts. And here we have the laws of inheritance. Allah spells them out in detail with all of the calculations, right? So in order to show us the importance of giving everyone their rights. And then Allah tells us at the end of all of those ayat about inheritance, because in the end of the day, sometimes people don't follow the law. Someone has more power and someone able to take this and take that. And Allah tells that whoever fears Allah, Allah will and obeys the boundaries that Allah has set, Allah will put them in Jannah forever. And whoever disobeys Allah and transgresses the boundaries, then they will be in the hellfire, for a long, long time, or possibly forever. So it's to give us the rules and then tell us the reward if you do it, and then the punishment if you don't. And maybe another interesting thing we find in this in these ayat, that it speaks about the wasiyah and the debt, and that all of the inheritance is after paying your debts, and also after the wasiyah. And we know that you can give up to 1/3 as a wasiyah, right? And many of the Sahaba, if not most of them, who had wealth, they would always seek to leave behind some kind of waqf. So that was typically because the waqf will live on after you. So, and they realized that in the end of the day, whatever money that they donate, that will remain for you. And whatever you give to your children, that will go to them, but that's not necessarily going to necessarily benefit you in the hereafter. So they would always make sure to build their hereafter, and this is one of the tools is the wasiyah and the waqf. And this is one of the ways that they say that most of the Sahaba, any Sahabi who had some wealth, typically they left behind some kind of waqf that would live on after them. May Allah give us tawfiq, inshallah, and give us the best in this world and the next, and bless us to have taqwa in how we earn our money and how we spend it, and bless our children and bless our families.